the theme for the meditation was, what's it like to notice the different aspects where there's resistance or contraction or withholding or disharmony without doing anything about it. Usually the sequence of events is that the tension is unconscious, or the withholding is a condition where there's not a whole lot of awareness. It can be very subtle. And what arises oftentimes is just a state. It's a state that's uncomfortable. And that we are aware of. So we skip over the sequence. We feel the state, and then we move into action to get ourselves out of that state. Right? By fixing it or by just avoiding it, whatever our tendencies happen to be, we move straight into action. But we don't stay with the first part of that sequence. Oftentimes we miss it. And oftentimes the action that we take removes us away temporarily from that original tension or withholding or disharmony, whatever's happening. So we're removed, and then it arises again because it's not seen. And the actions that we have taken offer temporary relief, but are not really addressing the root cause. Where it can be really interesting to experiment is to refine our ability to see and to notice that first place of origination of state and action. And as we bring our attention to that origination, how does the unfolding change? So that was the guideline for the meditation, more as a place to find out for yourself. The tension or disharmony or the withholding that happens, oftentimes when we bring our attention to it, actually changes. So a more concrete example could be, I'm feeling nervous being in this situation, and I'm withholding some aspect of myself, and I'm covering it up because I don't want other people to know. But the moment I notice it, and if there's transparency about it, it shifts our state from that of holding back and maybe all the different flavors of emotions that emerge from that withholding, like maybe there's shame, maybe there's stories about our competence, whatever it be, right? Which are all distracting and which are not getting to that point of origination. But there's something about noticing it very clearly and being transparent, at least to yourself, about what's actually happening, that releases a part of the tension that accrues. And the tension that accrues is from something is being shown by the body for us to see it and attend to it. And instead, we get distracted and we go into action that might not actually be the most appropriate for that point of origination. Another way to frame this is empathy. Because the body is speaking in its own language. And instead of listening with presence, we go into fixing what it's telling us. And we all know what the impact of that is. Disconnection. So we are reestablishing the line of communication that's happening. We're getting clarity around what it is that actually matters. And we are allowing the appropriate response to emerge once that comes into consciousness. Once it comes to consciousness, there is a feedback mechanism that happens back to the body. There's an acknowledgement of like, oh, that's in my consciousness now. And the body takes that information and reconfigures it inside, which might not be part of our conscious process. And then it gives us the next piece of information. And if we're able to stay with that, we start to see more details about that point of origination. And as we see that, once again, not trying to fix or change it, but just letting the system integrate that information, more information becomes available. So this is the root methodology for a particular meditation practice called Vipassana. Vipassana is we are just watching. And as we are just watching, moment to moment, what's happening without intervening, insight arises. And this insight that arises is profound. It uproots core origination of a lot of the things that float to our consciousness and a lot of things that the body is responding to and wanting us to know. And when we have that full availability of information, when we have that aha, everything changes. And the biofeedback that we get is the felt sense of clarity and of knowing. And from that place, there is an unshakable confidence about what the next action is. We don't have to figure it out. It arises from the organism. So a part of this is refining our ability more and more and more to see and get closer and closer and closer to what's happening. And also developing a certain level of discipline to wait and to not act and to not interfere. There is a time and place for action. And the type of action that emerges from this is unimaginable, the amount of impact that it has. And oftentimes the idea for what that action should be is completely different than what we could have consciously figured out, a solution that we might have come up with ourselves. It might be really outside of the box. And when we let ourselves rest in this place and wait and be with the unfolding and have these moments of insight that arises, This also creates a certain level of confidence. So I'm not just having faith that if I stay here long enough, it will happen. I am really tasting the evidence on an organismic felt sense, but also in the unimaginable solutions that become available. And this is the place for right action. And what I mean by right, not so much right or wrong, but right as in correct. It's the most appropriate. There's no moralistic aspect to this. It's the most appropriate for the given circumstances. It's quite a reframe because disharmony or places of resistance, which oftentimes are uncomfortable, can actually be viewed as an opportunity. So that instead of not wanting it and trying to make it go away, I sense, oh, here's this opportunity to actually have access to something bigger than what I could imagine. And we have to be careful with this because, of course, the egoic mind is going to get involved and is going to be like, oh, here it is. Let's figure this out. Let's see what emerges. But it really serves as a portal to help us unwind deep, deep conditioning. So the Vipassana practice is noting. Noting is just sometimes using small words to point at what's happening. Right, so I'm noticing sound. I'm noticing tightness in the chest. I'm noticing story about all the things I have to do. I'm noticing, etc. Right? I'm just noting moment to moment what's happening in a very simple way where I'm not trying to conceptualize what's happening. The actual label doesn't matter. It's the pointing the attention to what's happening that's of value. And this pointing the attention to what is happening without doing anything about it, without trying to figure it out, brings us closer and closer to experience. And there's a biofeedback to that, to knowing what's actually happening. The body relaxes. It's getting acknowledgement. It's also getting safety. It's getting safety that we're all on board here, right? We have a shared reality around what actually is going on. We're not in tension or conflict with each other, but the organism is trying to communicate something and I'm looking over there, or I'm going to go do this other thing, right? Or I'm going to pile up more stuff. So just a place to explore. I'm sharing all of this because I had a moment today. I am navigating a tension. And the tension is there's all these things I need to get done. And there's a real time sensitivity to all of these things. And I'm burnt out. So part of me doesn't want to do these things. The part of me just wants to relax and play. But when I try to relax and play, I can't because all these things keep coming up in my mind. So even though I make the space and time to relax and play, I'm dissatisfied. And when I'm actually doing those things, I'm resentful and dissatisfied because I want to relax and play. So it doesn't matter which option I choose, I'm stuck. No matter what, I'm dissatisfied. And of course, my small self is how do I get myself out of the situation? Like, what's the solution? And what I started doing was noting out loud, moment to moment, dissatisfaction, feeling like I need to attend to all the things I need to do, wanting to relax, fatigue, exhaustion, resentment. And the more I started being able to verbalize what was happening moment to moment, there was a relaxation that happened. I'm not saying that the tension is resolved, but there was a relaxation because I got really close to what my experience was versus getting lost in the dissatisfaction and trying to come up with ideas to fix the situation. So while I still don't have a solution to the circumstances, at least I'm clear around what the circumstances are, so that I'm unpeeling the layers of the onion to get to the root. And that is wise use of the mind. Not trying to figure it out, but being able to point out and state what's actually happening. I'm not asking the mind to do more than what its capacity is, which is to solve this dilemma that is pretty complicated. Although I really want to know, and I just be with that. And when I land in each of those notings, there's different emotions that arise. Like when there's like, I just want to relax. There's sadness. There's compassion. There's so much I need to get done. There's fear. There's anxiety. I'm able to slow it down by noting so that I can actually feel the impact of being with that facet of my experience. And in feeling the impact of that, it shifts the state. It also offers more information. So what we do in each moment determines what the next moment is going to feel like and be like. And if we can follow the sequence and be with the sequence step by step, the next moment will be that is more closely aligned to what serves. Instead of rushing through it and skipping or going in a different direction. So we slow it down, slow down the sequence and notice. And then track what is the impact of noticing. Because there is an impact. There's a physiological impact and there's an emotional impact. And there's something just about bringing attention to, taking the time to look and to listen, which brings forth love. That is love. Love is giving our time and our attention towards something. And there's a softening of the heart. And when there is a softening of the heart, the egoic mind relaxes a little. There can be room for curiosity because there's safety. Because the container that's holding this process is one of tenderness and care and interest. And then it's really surprising what emerges. For me, in that moment, what emerged was just seeing all of the raindrops hanging from the flowers and the leaves and a spider web that was jeweled with all of these drops of water. And I was captivated by that. I was captivated by beauty. And I let myself be imbued by that beauty. And noticed that in this moment, Even though there's so many things to do, there is a portal into what is sacred. And that gave me balance, and the tension dissolved for that moment. But what was needed was granted, which was to be able to land, to feel connected, to feel relaxed, to get rest. For the duration of that moment. And in that moment, I recognized the abundance, not the scarcity. So we don't know what can arise from this process. But whatever arises in my experience has been the most appropriate thing. And it's always different than what I think it should be. So experiment and see what you discover.